come on and share her journey, and I was just rereading about it where she talks about it, and it's incredible. So I'm so excited to hear everything she has to say about it. And hi,
Hello,
there's
Catherine.
your book. I
Hello.
was just because I showed you last time, but I have your book up without the cover on it because
Yeah.
I have the cover inside because I love I always take the covers off the book, but it's such an amazing book, and I'm glad you have it right behind you so people can see it too.
Oh, thank you. I am so honored to be on your show. And I don't think I've ever spoken about this topic live actually with anybody.
Oh
This
my
will this will be a
gosh.
first. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna try not to cry. And I just know a lot of people um, have questions about surrogacy and maybe they're scared of it or they're, which I was,
Mhm.
all the things. So I just want
Yeah.
to say thank you for the kind of conversations you have on your show. I think they really impact
Oh.
so many people.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I mean, it's incredible how open you are about your experience. I know you talk about it in your book and then also your this amazing article that you did for parents.com, just talking about your whole surrogacy experience. And it is something that I think, as you were just saying, people are scared about. They're nervous to even go down that road. And
Yeah.
as we know now, especially in this, time in our lives where people are really open about fertility struggles, surrogacy is an option, and there are also a variety of other options. And I loved in the article that you were talking about your experience with trying to get pregnant, and I think you said that you felt like you were failing and that your body was failing you. So why don't we go back before we talk about how you got to surrogacy, just talk about a little bit your fertility experience, because that's something that is such a big topic we talk about on BDA Baby, and everyone's is so unique.
Yeah, it's wild when you think your body is just supposed to do something, right? And it's so easy to kind of judge ourselves when all of a sudden it's not doing what you thought your whole life it's just supposed to do. And I was building it cosmetics, so I was working crazy hours, 100-hour weeks for many years. And but I also knew I wanted I've always wanted to adopt, by the way.
Oh,
I
wow.
always wanted to adopt and have a bunch of kids. And so my husband and I started trying, and this actually turned into a 10-year journey of miscarriages, of fertility treatments. And it was something that I hid for a long time. I would go to the early morning appointments and then go in and work all day, and kind of like I would keep that part of my journey private. But it was really a decade of kind of trying everything from all the shots to all the egg retrievals to all the stuff. And it was several times actually that I wasn't able to carry a pregnancy successfully to term. And so it was something that I went through a kind of a big journey of just feeling like a failure. And then knowing that's not true, right? I know that's not true. And I
Right.
would never think that about anyone else. But it was like, oh my gosh, why isn't this happening? And I would pray like crazy about it. And it was just a big thing. And I think also one thing I'll say is when I look back now, I mean, a lot of people see it cosmetics as this billion-dollar business and all that. But I also think probably the toll that stress can take on our lives can also really impact this journey as well. So my journey was a lot of stress,
Right.
self-imposed mainly because I was driving this business growth. I loved our mission. I loved our customers. But then I also had this private part of my life that really almost no one knew about, just my
Mhm.
closest friends. And it was a really tough journey for about a decade. And I didn't know that through the journey of surrogacy, I would learn some of my greatest life lessons. I believe, I believe God had this plan. I just didn't see it at the time. And it's really hard when we don't understand at the time why it feels like we're constantly failing.
Right. And I mean, I want to talk about that because that's incredible as well, just to be able to, to keep in mind that God has a plan, but especially in the moment of dealing with something and struggling with something that can be so hard. But you were building this business, as you were saying, It Cosmetics, which every woman and men know about as well, because it's so successful and you see it everywhere, and it's, you know, amazing products and everything. But you're building that, and you're this, you know, incredible businesswoman, so successful, and then privately behind closed doors having a 10-year long fertility struggle and having miscarriages, feeling like you're a failure, taking pregnancy tests, and as you wrote in the article, you know, countless negative pregnancy tests, and just the emotional roller coaster of that. Can you speak a little bit about how you dealt with that, you know, showing your face as one person and then coming home and having this, you know, journey that was incredibly emotionally challenging to deal with?
Yeah. You know, it was interesting, Catherine. I think that, you know, I had started this business, right? And all of a sudden I found myself, it was years and years and years of rejection and hard work. But eventually we had 1,000 employees, and I was, you know, became the first female CEO of a L'Oreal brand in their 100+ year history when L'Oreal acquired a company. And I found myself in this interesting role as a woman where I was like, oh, I'm a woman, I'm a CEO. I need to be a leader in front, you know, I need to walk into the office and inspire everyone for our mission. But I also have this deep pain going on in my personal life. And I think it's an interesting journey of learning. Because I went through a phase of compartmentalizing everything and hiding it and just trying to show up. And I, of course, would have so many employees come into my office and share their own stuff they were going through, and, you know, their own family challenges, and ask for time off for this or that, or share. And I would always listen, of course, compassionately. And I realized I never understood it truly until I went through it myself.
Right.
And it was a really tough season of trying to find that balance, I think, with what is the role that we define for ourselves and how we're strong for everyone else, especially those of us that are people pleasers. But then also we have these things going on that we keep inside. And for me, sharing this journey, really for the first time ever, and believe it, and for the first time speaking about it actually live with you, has been really healing, because I think that I know I'm not alone. I know there's so many people out there that may be going through this journey right now, and maybe thinking about, like, what am I going to do? By the way, side note, I think you know this part from the book, but, like, you know, in this process, you know, I found out I was adopted myself later in life, in my late 20s, and this whole kind of journey became pretty crazy. But you know, what I did for a long time, and I don't know that it was the right decision, but I would really compartmentalize all of the pain I was going through, and I would just show up and for our company and all, you know, the 1,000 employees that we had, and then we had millions of customers, and I would just try to pour my heart into everyone else. But you're right, I would go home, sometimes whine, sometimes just like sobbing on the couch. Sometimes I turn on Real Housewives, like on the DVR, and replay it, and then just cry. You know, and it was a long journey of trying to be strong for everyone else, and just feeling like it's still at that point, you know, that I needed to do this on my own. Like, I had never considered surrogacy. The thought of it would freak me out. You know what I mean? Because I'm like kind of not a lone wolf, but I'm someone that likes to depend on myself. So the thought of that was so scary to me.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, you know, you talked about, you know, how you always had this kind of idea that you maybe wanted to adopt, that you wanted to have a lot of kids, you wanted to be a mom, of course. And then, you know, you are on this 10-year long struggle of trying to get pregnant, do something that you always thought that your body is supposed to, you know. And I think most women, including myself, it's like you think like, oh, that's going to happen so easily. And then you're, you know, in the situation, you're like, maybe things aren't happening the way that they are supposed to, or as fast as I want them to. So I think, you know, and then on top of that for you, it's, you know, building this whole company and having this, you know, putting on this brave face and needing to lead a whole company and, you know, tons of people into all the success of your business. So that is a lot to deal with. And then, you know, you talked about in the article about having all these struggles, getting close to being 40, and then realizing this is actually something that you want to focus more on, and going to the doctor and having this diagnosis of having a heart-shaped uterus, which I hear is much more common than we actually, you know about. But you have a heart-shaped uterus. So you know, the idea of being able to carry a baby to full term might not have been as realistic
Mhm.
as you may have thought it would have been. And you are now faced with the option of maybe adoption, maybe surrogacy, because you have the ability to create embryos, but which route do you want to go down? And you chose surrogacy, but as you just mentioned, you were terrified of it. Can you talk a little bit about the fear there?
Yeah, and it's interesting. I still want to adopt and everything else. We went down both paths. So we started speaking to adoption facilitators, and we decided let's do adoption and surrogacy. Let's see if we're blessed enough to even have one of them
Right.
come to fruition. And it just ended up that the path of surrogacy went so much quicker than the adoption path, which we're
Mhm.
still in process of.
Wow, it
And
is such a long journey, I've heard, right, for adoption, which is
yes,
wild.
yeah, it really is. But you know, being someone who's adopted, it's funny. My whole life, I knew I wanted to adopt, even before I
I
found
know
out
that's so
by
it's
surprise
insane.
in my late 20s. Yeah. So we're still on the journey of adopting. But what happened is we looked into it. I didn't know anything about surrogacy. I
Mhm.
had seen like stories and movies or on the news that scared the crap out of me. Like, you know, a surrogate, you know, of course they're dramatizations, but like
Yeah.
a surrogate takes off with the baby and all these things. And so it really scared me. But we started looking into both, and I worked with an agency. I talked to a bunch of different agencies. I learned a lot for anyone who's considering surrogacy. I learned that different states have different rules around it. Different states allow it and some don't. There are states where, as the parents, you can be on the birth certificate, and some where you can't. And so the journey started with me just researching all of that, and then
Mhm.
talking to different agencies, and just trying to understand the whole process and how it works, and asking all those questions like, have you ever had a situation where, like, you know, because when you think about it, you know, you're trusting a real life human angel, by the way, but that I've learned, but you're trusting another person to carry your child.
Mhm.
And
It's huge.
it's huge. And it is, I was so petrified.
Right.
When we started the journey, I was still, you know, still working 100-hour weeks, but I was going on QVC for about 250 live shows a year. And so I worried initially, because what happens, let me back up. So we went with an agency that was based in Chicago, I think, but they work with gestational carriers or surrogates all across the
Mhm.
country. And they kind of initially tried to ease a lot of my fears. They're like, so surrogates, you know, that they don't do it for the money. They don't, like, that most of them feel it's part of their calling. That they a lot of the stories they shared with me were these beautiful stories. And so I went into it open-minded, but a little bit scared. And I would say, have you ever had when a person take off with someone else's baby? Have you ever? Yeah, I asked all the questions. They're like, no, we've never. Like, that's what you see in movies, but or you might see it once every couple years in the news somewhere, but it's not. So they kind of put a lot of those fears to ease, and then we started the process with them. And what happens is for anyone considering it, in case you
Yeah,
don't
please
know
tell
this.
us.
Oh gosh, so Catherine, so they first, you know, interviewed me and my husband and all that. And then before they do these match calls where you go on a video call with a
Mhm.
potential surrogate, before they do that, before they match you with anyone, this was the part I wasn't ready for, that I couldn't have anticipated. They need to know your beliefs and where you stand on a lot of things.
Right.
And all of the things that if you're carrying your baby yourself, you don't need to worry about, hopefully ever.
Mhm.
But they need to know, what are your thoughts and beliefs on these really tough issues in case they do happen down the road, and they
Right.
need to match you with a surrogate that has the same beliefs. And there's no right or wrong answer, but they ask you a lot of tough questions, like, how would you, I don't know if this is TMI, I'll just share one of
No,
the
we're all about
toughest.
TMI here.
Okay. These are things you never want to think about, but they ask you things like, well, if, you know, you guys all get pregnant together and let's say the embryo splits into 2 or 3 or 4 and the doctor says you have to do a reduction if any of them are going to survive, meaning you would have to terminate 1 or 2 or you're going to lose them all. How do you feel about that? There's other scenarios like if, you know, all these tough questions that you would never want to think about or decide.
Right.
And you actually, I would say that the toughest part of the journey looking back was having to think those through, talk them through, and then but they want to match you with a surrogate that has the same beliefs, right? Because there's really horrible possibilities in any pregnancy, God forbid. But if, let's say there's a situation where if they don't, you know, they either have to they have to terminate the pregnancy to save the surrogate's life, right? But you might have a surrogate that doesn't believe in that, right? And so there's just so many scenarios,
so many different things to think about. And it's also, I mean, the idea of, you know, you're putting your embryo, your baby into another person who you're just meeting now for the first time. It's not like you have a 20-year-long friendship with this person. And then, you know, God forbid something happens and you also, you know, there's a whole loss of control anyway when you're pregnant about, you know, it's your body does what it's going to do and, you know, knows how to handle certain parts of a pregnancy. And there is that loss of control because you're, you know, the baby's in control, but it's on top of that, to have a surrogate be there, there's a whole other aspect of a loss of control because you can't tell her what to eat or, you know, what to do or how to walk down the stairs. There's just like, I would imagine that would be really, as someone who's as genius as a businesswoman as yourself, I imagine that was a big part of it as well.
You know, I have to say, yes. And also, you know how like if you date someone for a while and then you think they're amazing and then like 6 months later, you're like, oh, they're not who right? So the thing is, you can't just like be like, peace out, because like, it's like this, this situation where you hope and pray that the person you feel is the best match and that they feel for them. And it's both ways, right? Because it's this beautiful partnership. But I'm sure that every person who chooses to be a surrogate also has the same concerns, which they don't want to be matched with a person or a couple that then 6 months later is all freaked out and demanding and all that. So it's like this thing where you're just diving in head first once you go. And, you know, it started out, so because I was doing so much television at the time, we had just sold at cosmetics to L'Oreal, but I was still doing all that. I was initially worried, like, well, what if I hop on this match call? What if this person's a cosmetics customer? And then what if, it was all the thoughts, and the agency said, well, you can put a wig and disguise on. I'm like, okay. And so just for the initial calls, we did that. And, but then once, it was the very first person we met, I just felt this peace. And she and her husband popped on. They had 5 kids of their own already. And she said her whole life, this was the match. They were matching with the potential surrogate. She said her whole life she felt called to do this for a person or a couple who couldn't conceive, who was struggling. And even though she had 5 kids of her own, she's like, I've just known this my whole life. I'm called to do this. And her eyes were like sparkly and warm. And I was so worried until like I saw her face on the screen, and I just had this peace. And they, after this match call, right, the agency will facilitate it, and then they ask you all the tough questions. So you give your answers like out loud in front of each other, and they make sure that you're aligned on everything. And they see, you know, they talk through everything. Like, what are your thoughts on eating organic? And what are your thoughts? All the things.
Yeah, that's like, a big thing. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. All like the lifestyle questions. And she was in another state, and her husband and her family, her 5 kids, are in a different state than me and my husband. But we talked through everything, and after the call, the facilitator said, you guys have the whole weekend to think about it, you know, all of you, both families. And you just need to let us know by Monday. And we got off the call, and I literally like looked at my husband. We both started crying, and he doesn't cry that often, but we were both just like, it just felt right. And we called right away and said, you know, we want to be matched with them if they want to. And they did the same thing, and we ended up having this match. And I just want to share for anybody, I guess, scared of the process like I was, it ended up being the most beautiful. Like, we're really good friends with our surrogate and her husband and their kids to this day. And the journey was beautiful, and it was challenging. And I learned one of the greatest lessons in my entire life, which is that, and this is really for anybody, maybe part of your community or my community that's listening or watching this in the replay, that feels like they're a lone wolf, or like they got this, like my whole life, Catherine, I was always like, I got this, like I'm independent, my independence is a badge of honor, I don't need to count on anyone else.
Right.
Like, and I always thought that lone wolfness or that independence was a badge of honor. When I went through this surrogacy journey, when another human being who felt called to do this her whole life, she is like this real life angel in my life, but she did something for me and my family I couldn't do myself. Like, I couldn't do it myself. I couldn't count on myself. I couldn't be that lone. And in the process, I had the most beautiful experience with her, right? I love her and her family. And I realized in that journey that, like, and maybe anyone else who's a lone wolf might relate to this, but I realized, like, oh, my independence wasn't this badge of honor. It was really a deep-seated fear that I wasn't worthy of someone else showing up for me.
Right.
And I realized that, and it changed everything. And through this journey of this like beautiful relationship that I developed with our surrogate, I started changing my own life outside of that, and like asking my own friends to show up for me the way I show up for them, and just other things. It was a really kind of eye-opening experience. We had all together in the same room, we had our daughter named Wonder, and it was beautiful. Our surrogate was just so, and she's like, I want to make sure that when she comes out, she goes right on you for skin to skin. I'm like, okay. And I'm like, it was the whole thing. And
you guys also did the whole embryo transfer together, which I loved reading that whole experience, just like even envisioning that for people who are, going to, or thinking of going down the surrogacy road, find themselves with in a situation where you're trying to decide how you might have a family, how you might come to motherhood, because there are, again, so many different pathways to motherhood. And if you might be thinking of surrogacy as an option, to be able to read your story and to think that you're all in a room together as you are holding the hand of your surrogate as the embryos are, transferred into her uterus, is such a beautiful thing to be able to have that together, and to be able to have that experience, and then of course have such a beautiful experience throughout the whole time that she was pregnant, and then end in your delivery, which sounded like such a quick, I was reading that, I was like, oh my gosh, after having just, gone through labor myself, your daughter really just came into the world ready to go.
Yeah, it was wild. Yeah, for anyone who's maybe thinking about the experience for the first time, thank you for bringing that up, because that was such a big moment that I didn't know what to expect. Like, how is this going to go down? How's it going to happen? But yeah, we were all in the room together, like holding hands, praying. And then the big screen comes up, like the big monitor, and you actually see, it's the tiniest, like the tiniest little tube, but you can see blown up on the big screen the moment your own embryo gets transferred into her uterus. Yeah, and she cried. Like, we were it was really beautiful, and then you're just like, that was like, okay, like that just happened, and then you're just like freaking out, and then you have to wait to see what happens afterwards. And yeah, when we got toward the delivery date, we were in the hospital, and she told the doctor, she's like, listen, because she has 5 babies, right? Yeah, so she loves being pregnant and all these things, and I have a lot of friends that do not like being pregnant. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so many people talk about like not being pregnant. When I was reading it, and she's like, has 5 kids, been pregnant 5 times, and she's like, let's do this again. I just love it. I'm like, props to her. It's
Well, and
amazing.
she had told the doctor, she's like, you know, trust me, like with my last baby, they said I wasn't dilated enough. But I knew the baby was coming and the baby came quick and they're like, trust me. Anyways, they kept coming in to check her and they're like, you're at a 6. And she's like, okay, okay. And all of a sudden she's like, I know I'm ready. I know I'm ready. I know I'm ready. And she pushed the button and the nurses came in and they checked her cervix again. And they're like, you're not ready. She's like, I'm telling you, I'm ready. And they left. And it was like, I don't know, a couple of minutes later. And she's so sweet. And like, I've never heard her swear. All of a sudden, I hear her just yell, get the effing doctor. The baby's coming. But like full out words.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, and her husband ran in the hallway to find the doctors. And all of a sudden I looked down and my daughter's head is out. And I was like, I got, and I didn't know what to do. So I went in to like, do I catch her? I'm like, what do I? And so I'm going in for my literally not knowing what the heck I'm doing. And before I knew it, there were some nurses running in and they grabbed her and pulled her out. And my daughter broke her collarbone, but there was never any doctor. And then our doctor came in like way after them. But it happened so fast. And so, yeah, we have my daughter Wonder, who is 2.5 right now. And about a year after she was born, we got a phone call from my surrogate and her husband, and they said, you know, I'm not sure if you guys want to have another baby, but if you do, we'd love to do this journey with you again. There's no one we can imagine doing it with, and my husband and I were like, like sobbing, and we went through the journey a second time, and with our same surrogate, and we had our son Wilder during the pandemic about a year ago. He just turned a year.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, just a few weeks ago. So he was born. My husband was in the RV in the hospital parking lot. I was in the room with our surrogate, and they only let you have one person in the room because of COVID. Yeah. So she had her husband in initially, and at the last minute, she's like, okay, you can it be you, Jamie? I'm like, yes. And I was like, I'll take care of you. Like if anything happens. And so then I was in the room with her. And so then I did the birth on Zoom so my husband could watch it from the RV in the parking lot. And then our son Wilder was born that way. And and they've become dear friends. And I am all the fears I had, all the worries, all the, never happened. And it's a whole other thing than I could have imagined. So
I love that. It's such a beautiful story. What was it like to be in the room? Because the skin on skin thing is like the first thing that you think about of, this baby's coming into the world, and it's already probably you go into it with this idea of like this woman is delivering your child, and then you go to put your baby on your skin for the first time after it's been growing in a different person. And what was that like? I would imagine, I mean, I know I've seen the pictures of it, and I read your you talk about it so amazingly, but what is it like to have actually witnessed your baby come out and then just place them on your skin? Must have been just wild.
Yeah, I was so overwhelmed. I did not know how, because I'm like introverted in real life, even though I do like extroverted things for work and speaking and stuff, but in real life I'm really quiet. Like I'm always the one that listens, and like I always bring extroverted friends with me to parties, and it's great. But anyways, I didn't know how I was going to react, and I like lost it. I was like, ah! It was like the most beautiful moment. I just like both times, and I just like, it's like this moment of like God just blessed me with the most incredible gift. And it's like everyone says, oh, you just want to know if they're healthy. You just want to know if they're healthy. You're just like, is he okay? Is he okay? Like, is everything okay? Is he, like all the things, and it's just I don't know. And I'm in awe. I'm in awe of how beautiful people are. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like we are in a world that's so tough. And the past, especially 1.5 years, 2 years, 4 years, it's been so divisive. And between politics and the pandemic, and a lot of families have become divided. And there's just so much that's difficult. But I think this journey reminded me, like, oh my gosh, there are like real life angels,
right?
That are all around us. And sometimes we just have to be brave enough to trust and to risk and to be open to it.
Mhm.
And I was so fearful of it,
Yeah,
especially like you said, right? Like we want to control things that matter to us, right? And this was
totally.
an experience of having to lose control, having to hand over control. And I'm so glad I did.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's such a beautiful story and a beautiful experience. And I got goosebumps when you said that your surrogate called you a year and a half later to see if you wanted to do it again, because it's just, to be able to have such an amazing relationship with someone, you never would have had that person in your life had you not decided to go down this road and to, you know, find your own way to motherhood is such a beautiful story and a beautiful journey and experience. And now you have these two little babies that are just like, it's just such an incredible thing. And I think it's so important that you talk about it. And you also, just to wrap it up, you did get questions about, everybody knows the success of your company and how hardworking you are. And now New York Times bestselling author, which is so incredible and amazing. How do you balance? I mean, you have two little ones, and you work like crazy. How do you balance, motherhood and your work life?
Yeah, this was so difficult for me. I honestly, it's one of those things I thought I understood. I thought after years of having incredible women who were part of the cosmetics with me come into my office and share with me their struggles
Mhm.
over mom guilt and over all these things. And, I thought I understood it fully. I did not understand it until I went through it, right? And I went through this journey, especially the first year of my daughter, where if I wasn't with her, I felt guilty. And if I was with her, I was thinking sometimes about work or this or that or all that. So it was this weird thing of feeling like I was failing all the time. And I realized I was robbing myself of the joy, like of
Mhm.
everything 24/7. And it was kind of this journey of, I think that we always hear this idea of balance and that we're like supposed to achieve it and we're not. So we're failing and we're doing something wrong. And I kind of had to get to this point where I was like, okay, how do I want to spend my time? Like, what's right for me? Like, how much do I want to spend time creating or serving or, seeing my friends? And how much do I really want to be with my family? And for some people, that's 16 hours a day. And for some people, it's 24. And for some people, it's 3.
Mhm.
But I had to do that work of like, what do what is the life I want to create and what feels good or right or true for
Mhm.
me. And then when my work now, and I'm still working on it, to be honest with you, Catherine, I still struggle with this, but
Yeah.
my work now is trying to be where I'm at and just be fully present and not and be where my feet are
Right.
and feel the joy of it. And so, when I'm with my kids, I have, after 10 years of working 100-hour weeks, I realized part of why I sold my business was because I realized I was addicted to work.
Mhm.
Like I liked it more than anything else. And
Yeah.
I'm like, this is a problem. I'm going to look back and regret missing out on my whole life.
Right.
And so, but I still to this day, right now, still to this day, like when I'm with my kiddos, I have to catch myself because all of a sudden I won't be present for a minute and I'll be like, oh, and I'll be thinking about something that matters way less to me, but it's about work and I'm drawn to it. And I have to be like, no, no, you know what? I'm going to be really fully present.
Right.
I'm going to enjoy this temper tantrum that's happening or whatever it is. You know what I mean?
Enjoy
And
the temper tantrum.
and then I'm working on if I travel, like I have
Yeah.
thoughts like, wait, I'm not going to see my kids for 2 days. And I have all these, and I'll start to judge myself. And I have to be like, nope, because I don't want my daughter or my son to not go after their dreams and go after the calling on their heart to give and
Of course.
serve
Yeah.
because they're judging themselves. So I'm like, okay, I have to reframe everything in my mind.
Mhm.
Um, to try to overcome that definition of balance that I learned
Yeah.
or I was taught
Yeah.
that isn't, I don't think it's healthy.
Yeah. No, I think that's so amazing. I think it is a, from what I'm told, it is a lifelong experience of trying to, you know, to be a present parent and also to, do what you love, which is for you, your work, and also being with your kids, of course. But the mom guilt and the mom shame, I mean, there's so much of that. And I think it's at the end of the day that we just have to do our best as moms and be there for our kids, and also set a great example. And for you, it's following your dreams and teaching your kids to also follow your dreams. And I just think that your story is so beautiful, and the fact that you're so open and willing to share it and talk about it, and to see your, you know, two little kids with you now is just, I think it's really helpful for other people who might be wondering about the surrogacy experience. I think we hear more about it now in the media because, you know, people are talking about their journeys and being open like you are. And it's so helpful for people who may feel like, you know, they are on a 10-year-long journey of fertility struggles and maybe can't feel like they, you know, can get to a place where they're able to be a mom. And you hear stories like yourself, which is so encouraging and exciting for people to be able to think that they have the opportunity to become a mom, and especially up ahead of Mother's Day, to be able to celebrate you as a mom and just your journey. It's so incredible, and I'm so grateful that you took the time to come on here and to share it.
Oh, well, thank you. And yeah, I hope someone needs to hear it. Whoever's listening, I think. And the other thing, that just one more thing to add, is I was just thinking about this when you said that, is like, even though someone else carried my child, like I can't imagine loving my child more, like bonding even more. Like there's nothing, I mean, I don't know because I haven't physically had one, but like I can't. And similarly, like my mom who raised me, right? I was adopted. Like I can't imagine loving someone more. And I just want to share that because I think it's a fear a lot of people have if they adopt or if they have surrogacy. Well, they're, you know what I mean? And so I just want to share that from experience.
Yeah, no, I think that's a beautiful thing to share. And also to, you know, to know that whatever your journey to motherhood is, it's your journey. And there are so many different kinds of journeys there, whether it's surrogacy, whether it's, you know, IVF, if it's adoption, if it's a, you know, grandmother raising their grandchild. There's so many different forms of mothering and being a mom. And if you know, had a surrogate, it means absolutely no different than if you were to carry your baby yourself. And it's just, it, you know, it taught you maybe different lessons than you would have learned about yourself and about your life had you not had that experience. So it's incredible, and I'm so happy for you, and congratulations again on your book. It's such a hit, and everybody go buy it. It's amazing.
Oh, thank you. Congratulations on your book as well.
Thank you.
The paperback launch. I know that in our event, I was just like gushing about it for an hour, but it actually, I told you this already, but it really impacted my life. It helped me shift my thoughts on forgiveness with a few people that I didn't realize I was still hanging on to, and it was probably impacting how they were toward me. And it was really life-changing. So hopefully everyone gets a gift of forgiveness too.
Thank you so much. Thank you again for coming on here, and we'll make sure to be posting it and any other surrogate information, and thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Catherine.
Bye. Happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day.
Bye.